Alright, so picture this with me for a second. We're past this pandemic and we're past the COVID regulations, and so it's a Saturday night and you want to go out with your friends. And so you go out and you go bowling, and it's a super fun night. You're bowling, you're eating, you're drinking, you're laughing at each other, you're laughing at the guy a couple lanes down who just tried to bowl in socks and fell right on his butt. And it's a super fun night and you're having a super great time, but there's just this one little thing that's kind of bugging you in the back of your mind, and you just keep wondering, how come my ball kept going into the gutter? Well, I for one love bowling. I've been bowling for 6 years, and so I'm here to help you out with some tips and kind of understanding the game, and just some things that have kind of helped me out over the years. And so in this, we're just going to go over the basics of the game and the tools that you use during the game. And then also we're going to look at your approach, which is basically how you throw the ball down the lane. Alright, so we have an example game here from our friend Joe. And so in each game, you will get 10 frames, which is like 10 different turns basically. And then in each turn, you get 2 different balls that you can throw down the lane. Unless, like this one, if you get a strike and you knock them all down, then you don't get a second turn. But if in this one, like you knock down 7 pins, then you still have some to pick up. So you'll get a second ball to try and pick those up. But in this case, they didn't pick them up, they missed one of them, so they only got 9. And then in this one, they knocked down 7 pins, and then on their second turn, they got the rest, so they ended up getting a spare. And so that's what all these little symbols stand for, is strike, spare, and then a little small S in the corner, like this one and that one. Those are going to stand for splits, which is basically when there's a pin on one side and another side and there's a space in the middle, and they're really hard to pick up, so you want to try to avoid them at all costs. Alright, so now that we understand a little bit more about the bowling game, let's look at some of the tools. So this first one is a bowling shoe. And this one's pretty old, but most bowling alleys will have rental shoes available for you to use. They are smooth on the bottom, and then the heel is grippy. So this allows you to slide and then catch yourself with the grippy heel before you slide onto the lane, because if you do slide onto the lane, that can be really dangerous. And that's why the guy that I mentioned earlier, who was bowling in socks, fell on his butt because he didn't have the grip to keep him up. The next thing is a bowling ball. This one is a 14-pound bowling ball. It is just plastic. It's pretty generic. So when you're looking for the fit, you want to look at the thumb hole and make sure your thumb fits snug but doesn't get stuck. And then as for these ones, typically there's 2. Some bowling balls have more, some have even less, if you could believe that. But typically this is the layout that you'll have, and you will just hold the ball like so. And there you go. Alright, so now that we know kind of what the tools are that we're using and everything, we're going to look at your approach. So when you throw the ball, it's going to look something kind of like this. Fairly simple. One thing to remember is to keep your wrist straight, so you don't want it bending all these different funky ways, because otherwise your ball will go to one gutter or the other. So make sure to keep your wrist straight. And then when you release, you don't want to release the ball all the way up here, because that is called lofting. So when you loft the ball, it's going to make the ball fly out onto the lane and then hit the lane and then go down and hit the pins. And it's just not going to be as accurate. Whereas if you throw your ball and you release it way down here, then it'll just glide onto the lane and it'll be more accurate. You'll be able to control where your ball goes a lot better that way. Alright, so now we have gone over a little bit of the bowling game, we've gone over some of the tools, we've gone over a little bit of the approach, and again, this is still very, very basic knowledge for bowling, but I hope that the next time you're able to go bowling, you can apply some of these things, maybe get a little bit better. If you have any other questions about bowling, feel free to ask any of the employees at your local bowling alley. Chances are, if they don't know the answer to your question, they know somebody who does. And if that's a little too inconvenient for you, or you don't feel like going up to somebody and asking them this weird question that you have, you can always look up the plethora of YouTube videos that are available on the subject of bowling, and I'm sure you can find an answer to your question.